Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stuart Arnott, President of Sustainability here at Croda. We're going to cover strategy, how we arrived at it, and how it's driving our business. Let me first start with smart science to improve lives. These 5 words communicate a powerful combination of innovation and sustainability, both of which Croda has a rich heritage in and a proven track record of delivery. Sustainability needs innovation, and innovation needs sustainability. As I'm sure most in the audience will know, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a blueprint for people, planet and prosperity, for a better future for all. Premised on leaving no one behind, in simple terms, 17 goals and 169 targets define the needs of the world and of course the business opportunities therein. They are universal, transcend across boundaries and apply across the workplace, marketplace and community. With careful alignment, they therefore represent great opportunities for a global company such as Croda with an estimated $12 trillion in market opportunities. As Steve has already introduced, our strategy is to be climate, land and people positive, all underpinned by a solid foundation of doing the right thing, which we call our fundamentals and which represent our social license to operate. It's important to say here that we've used the SDGs to drive our strategy and not simply stuck an SDG label on what we already do. The SDGs call for change. We've been careful to consider them at the individual target level, such that our actions tackle the real problems, not the broad subjects. We've picked out 2 or 3 key themes in each area which either reduce our negative impacts or accelerate and enhance the positive contribution we are able to make. Looking first at climate positive, our products will help our customers reduce or avoid carbon. Carbon saved as a ratio of carbon used is what we call carbon cover. Higher the number the better. Next, we will shrink the carbon footprint of our own operations and that of our supply chain, and we call this reducing emissions. And sustainable innovation describes a further shift away from fossil-based ingredients, which 90% of the world's chemistry set is currently built on. Now importantly, because the SDGs are all interrelated, it's not acceptable to make a contribution to one whilst impacting another negatively. For example, the move to a bioeconomy has the potential to significantly increase the amount of land used for non-food applications, as well as impacting soil quality, biodiversity and so on. We have a perfect example in Croda to demonstrate this point. Our investment in bio-based surfactants in North America has eliminated petrochemical ethylene oxide, a good thing, but at the same time has increased the amount of land we use, now that it has been replaced by ethanol made from corn. On the one hand, a fantastic carbon footprint reduction, but on the other hand, an additional burden on land. This is the interconnectivity of the SDGs I referred to. We see this as a key risk for the chemical industry, but a big differentiator for Croda, and have therefore put land positive at the very heart of our strategy. Fundamentally, our future growth will not come at the expense of land, and we will innovate to free up more land than we use. Effectively, this is land zero. Moving on to people positive, many of our products impact us positively on society, and this is particularly true of our healthcare business. Everyone has a right to a healthy life, and the health and well-being SDG calls for a big reduction in premature deaths from preventable diseases. Our leading technologies in vaccine adjuvants and sunscreen products mean we are well placed to address this basic need, and we intend to accelerate activities in this area. It's not all about products though. Croda has a huge amount of knowledge, goodwill and technologies that can change people's lives for the better in our communities, and we're setting up a foundation to do just that. And finally, and by no means least, the chemical industry is traditionally male dominated, and Croda is no exception. The business case for diversity in all forms is compelling, and we have therefore elevated gender equality to be one of our headline commitments. Now, we don't have enough time today for me to go through the targets in our fundamentals area, but I don't want to move on without at least giving them a mention. As you would expect, we have set challenging targets around occupational health, safety and well-being of our workforce, the safety of our processes, environmental stewardship, resource efficiency, fair income, knowledge management and product stewardship. Further, we will drive standards up in our supply chain and underpin our goal to be the most sustainable supplier of innovative ingredients through excellence in sustainability and CSR practices. The detail behind all this is available in a data pack which you can download, but of course I'd be happy to field any questions in the Q&A session later. This decade has been coined the decade of action, the exponential decade, or even the consequential decade. Whatever you care to call it, one thing is for sure, change will happen at an unprecedented rate, not just the problems, but also the solutions. In the face of this, we have shown real leadership by launching our 10-year strategy early in March this year. We believe it is a bold, ambitious, but credible strategy that will sit well with all stakeholders. Taken as a whole, our strategy is truly restorative and is balanced across the climate, nature and social issues. Long gone are the days when it's acceptable to do less bad. Croda's strategy is built on the firm belief that we have a responsibility to reverse the obvious negative trends we see around us. Not just to slow these trends down, but to actually turn the corner and put back more than we take. The climate needs it, nature needs it, and society needs it. Put as simply as I can, our response is to save more carbon than we use, save more land than we use, and improve millions of lives around the world. Now, as I said earlier, we've been careful to use the SDGs to inform our strategy. Although all 17 SDGs are important, we have identified these 9 where Croda can make a real difference. They are powerful drivers for our 3 sectors, which Martin, Jen and Nick will explain later. This alignment brings with it the promise of superior growth, whilst at the same time making a positive contribution to some of the biggest problems the world is facing. This is smart science to improve lives. Now, before I go into some detail on our strategy, I'd like to explain how it was arrived at. From the very beginning, we wanted it to come from within. We feel strongly that you can't pretend to be something that you're not, and we know very well that the Croda culture would reject anything that wasn't true to us. We were careful, therefore, to take external expert advice, but to build the strategy ourselves. This advice came from Aris and his team at the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership, their role being to bring thought leadership to the table, to help us see the bigger picture, and to encourage us to be courageous, and then to stress test the level of ambition that we set ourselves. A strategy created from within ensures a high level of buy-in for its implementation. Ours took around 2 years to prepare and involved a huge amount of engagement with the workforce. The board and executive committee were intimately involved too, showing the high level of commitment from the very top. We ran an internal competition to define our purpose statement, and we set up a purpose team to help communicate and win hearts and minds. Working groups carefully analysed which of the SDGs are material to Croda, and from this, and under Jez's leadership, we then defined a set of KPIs to chart progress. In summary, a strategy that has captured the imagination of our workforce, that is true to our purpose and is owned by the business, not the sustainability team. Now, actions speak louder than words, and I'd like to share some examples of decisions taken even before our strategy was launched. We committed to science-based targets, which I'll mention later and Julia will also cover. We included sustainability incentive in our new banking facility. We discontinued some chemistry which we felt was conflicting with what we stand for, and we incorporated sustainability metrics into remuneration. These examples demonstrate our purpose in action. So let me now turn to our strategy in a bit of detail with the help of 3 short animations, one each for climate, land and people. These animations have really been put together for internal purposes, but I think they'll work here too. First up is climate positive.
At Croda, we strive to have a positive impact on the world around us. We want to build on our fundamentals with our commitment to be climate, land and people positive by 2030. But what does this mean? Let's discover climate positive. It starts with the raw materials we use. Around 2/3 of them are already from these fields. We're still using some raw materials based on petrochemicals, but we're working to find alternative solutions. By 2030, 75% of our raw materials will be bio-based. In our factories, we're reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by switching to green electricity, using less energy wherever possible, and finding alternative energy sources. Like these bacteria, they create biogas, which we use to heat our production processes. We'll cut our emissions in half by 2030. We also help our customers and their consumers reduce emissions. For example, by creating ingredients our customers can use at lower temperatures, or by helping consumers drive lighter cars and protect fabrics during washing. Our goal is with every kilogram of greenhouse gas we emit, we help others avoid 4 kilograms of greenhouse gas emissions. That's our journey to being climate positive. Join us.
In summary, we will enable more carbon to be saved than we emit in our operations and supply chain, and we'll do this in 3 focus areas. Firstly, we will reduce our own emissions by around 50%. We are one of a very small number of companies in the chemical space that is committed to science-based targets with a 1.5-degree pathway, and our commitment extends to net zero by 2050. Secondly, we will move our class-leading bio-based raw material content from around 60% to 75%, thus eliminating more fossil feedstocks. This target is 3 times higher than the ambition of the European chemical industry. And lastly, we will provide our customers significant carbon savings to help them meet their own sustainability goals. Here we aim to save 4 tonnes of carbon for every 1 tonne we emit, which is getting on for double that of the European chemical industry. And now a short animation to explain land positive.
Let's discover land positive. It starts with innovating to help our customers boost the yield of crops, so land is used more efficiently. We also want to protect the environment by decreasing the amount of pesticide needed to be applied to fields. For example, by developing formulations that make pesticides stick to the plant, or by applying them in a coating on the seed itself. These technological breakthroughs will ensure it gets exactly where it needs to be. We're proud that we're using more bio-based raw materials for our products, but realize this means we will use more land. That's why we want to save more land through the products we develop for agriculture than the land we use for all our raw materials. Next to helping land be used more efficiently, our big ambition is to make more land available for agriculture. For example, by making plants more resilient to a changing climate. We already have some great ideas and will work together with innovative institutions and businesses all over the world to increase our impact. That's our journey to being land positive. Join us.
Our land use target is all about the application of our technologies to increase yields. Here, and on an incremental basis, we aim to save more hectares than is used to grow our bio-based raw materials. Climate change is having a significant impact on land use, which in turn impacts climate change, a vicious circle that needs to be broken. Our second goal recognises this and will bring an average of 2 technological breakthroughs to market each year specifically aimed at climate adaptation or mitigation. And finally, we understand well that our innovation will take us so far, but our impact can be much bigger by working in partnership with others. So our third target is to form 3 strategic partnerships specifically focused on degraded or compromised land. When put together, I hope that you see that we have a strong programme in this area, aimed at improving land use efficiency, protecting biodiversity and improving food security. This is the ecosystem services that Aris called out in his introduction. And finally, to our people positive animation.
Let's discover people positive. It starts with developing a more inclusive work environment. To achieve this, we will have a 50-50 gender split in applicants to all vacancies. We will also continue to educate our people about biases. By 2030, we want to have gender balance across our decision-making roles. We believe everyone has the right to a healthy life. We will use our smart science to accelerate the development of our ingredients to help prevent premature deaths from diseases such as malaria, AIDS and skin cancer. We will play an important part in the successful development of vaccinations for at least a quarter of the priority infectious diseases, as well as helping to protect 60 million people from skin cancer caused by the harmful effects of UV rays. We are determined to make a positive contribution to society, and it's our ambition to help as many people as we can with our smart science, time and resources in all our local communities everywhere on Earth. That's our journey to being people positive. Join us.
So, we will apply our innovation to improve millions of lives around the world, thus making a positive contribution to society. Our life sciences and beauty effects businesses are perfectly placed to help reduce premature mortality from disease. Our vaccine adjuvant technologies will target at least a quarter of the priority diseases as listed by the World Health Organization, and our sunscreen platform will help protect 60 million lives from skin cancer. Secondly, we are setting up a Croda Foundation aimed at improving many lives in the communities in which we operate. The trick here is to choose causes that benefit from our intellectual capital and to look for longevity of impact. Finally, we will correct the gender imbalance in our own organisation with a commitment to having an equal number of males and females in decision-making positions. Overall, we believe the social impact of our people-positive agenda is huge. So let me bring my section to a close. Why is our strategy different and why will we succeed? Well, there are many reasons behind this. We've been doing sustainability for a long time. It's not a passing fashion for which we've jumped on the bandwagon. Our track record and leadership make it credible and authentic to all stakeholders. Our people and culture really do set us apart, and this, coupled with the fact that they've been involved in creating the strategy, is a winning formula. Innovation need hardly be emphasised in a Croda presentation, but as I said at the beginning, sustainability needs innovation like never before. You will hear from my colleagues that our customers are crying out for sustainable solutions and making their own commitments that need our help. And as Steve has said so many times before, we know who our customers are. And finally, our track record of delivery speaks for itself. Look back at the last decade of our sustainability reporting and you will see meaningful positive contributions, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. To echo what Steve said at the beginning, sustainable business is good business. So to conclude, our strategy is based on science, is firmly aligned with society's urgent needs as defined by the Sustainable Development Goals, and seeks to tackle some of the economic and social and environmental challenges that Harris told us about. Importantly, it is complementary to the needs and wishes of our customers, who themselves are quickly lining up with the ESD agenda. It's ambitious, designed to change behaviour, and has the buy-in of the whole Croda family, where our can-do attitude and entrepreneurial spirit will turn strategy into action. We have a sense of urgency, and this is our call to action. I believe this is the decade of action, and Croda firmly intends to play its part. This is smart science to improve lives. I'll now hand over to Phil, who will talk about turning strategy into action. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Stuart. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Phil Ruxton, and since the beginning of this year, I've led our group sustainability team, helping Stuart and the Executive Committee finalise and then start to deliver on our commitment and the 2030 targets. Previously, I was a business guy, most recently leading our global smart materials business, part of Performance Technologies. You heard from Harris, Steve and Stuart about the decade of action, of the need to set lofty ambitions and challenging long-term targets for a chance to help society and the planet live sustainably. Well, I'm going to discuss the sense of urgency and the need to start work today. But it's not only about hitting targets, important though they are. It's also about engaging everyone across Croda, not just to do their part to meet our strategic commitments, but to decentralise and localise the activities for those most important for their place of work. In this way, we can be more agile and responsive to what will be evolving sustainability needs and activities, even in the next few years. Here we can see some comments from Angelica in Campinas, Brazil, and Mohsin at our manufacturing site in Hull, supporting the need to win hearts and minds. On our website, you can find many more examples in the video we launched with the Chemical Industries Association this summer. In many companies, and even in Croda until a few years ago, sustainability was viewed as a silo in the wider organisation. They do sustainability, we do business. To ensure we move beyond this limited mentality and embed the strategy across Croda, we've set up a formal sustainability committee, reporting directly to the board and executive committee, chaired by Stuart, whose sole job on the exec is to champion our sustainability agenda. The committee comprises a cross-section of leaders from Croda, each with a responsibility for specific 2030 target delivery and future thinking around the topic agenda. Where should we go next with our strategy? We're living the tagline that sustainability is no longer a specialist subject, but it's good to know that we have the specialists on hand. And we've set ourselves some challenging deliverables this year, starting with completing delivery on the previous 5-year sustainability strategy and meeting our public targets. Top of the list to meet our new commitment are decarbonisation roadmaps for our largest emitting sites. More on this from Julia shortly. We're embedding the required performance metrics and ensuring we set and publish intermediate milestones across all the targets. Finally, I'm working with the regional and business sector boards to ensure they identify their impact on the sustainability strategy and incorporate relevant objectives and KPIs into their strategies and plans. Business sector boards are also fully engaged to ensure they identify and deliver value from all this work. More on this in the second half of the event. But before we talk further about delivery, let's remind ourselves that none of this is new to Croda. We haven't recently been converted to green. As Steve and Stuart discussed, we've been on a very long journey to this point and are considered a sustainability leader already for our sector. Our offering to all markets is clearly differentiated, with over 60% of our raw material being bio-based and renewable, compared to the EU chemical industry average of 10%. While we're very capable of handling hazardous raw materials with an excellent safety record, across our portfolio, Croda is considered to have one of the least hazardous chemistry sets. For example, shown here versus REACH authorisations and restrictions. And while we have a lot more to do to decarbonise, we're starting today from a leadership position in renewable energy consumption, our manufacturing sites and offices. Pleasingly, this has been recognised externally by many institutions and ratings agencies. While we're confident in our sustainability strategy and do not feel the need to chase ratings, it's always nice to be recognised for the work we do. Now, just a note to the ESG specialists amongst you, we see the ratings and ranking industry growing exponentially at the moment. Everyone wants to sell their bespoke approach to measuring targets. While we'll do our best to proactively engage with the most important and popular agencies, amongst them MSCI and Sustainalytics for the investor community, CDP and EcoVadis for Croda's value chain, we also want to make everyone else's lives a bit easier when evaluating Croda against ESG criteria. So we're launching an ESG landing page on the investor section on croda.com where we'll be signposting data we're aware is of interest to this industry. We'll be adding further links and data as we go, but would really appreciate your feedback to ensure we meet your needs as best we can. Please take a look as it launches and send us your comments. Even before we launched our commitment to be climate, land and people positive this year, we had in place industry-leading performance targets for our sustainability strategy for many years. 2020 will be the end of the previous 5-year cycle and we'll be delivering on most of our objectives. Full detail will be in our 2020 sustainability report, but to call out a few. Since we began measuring emissions in 2006, we've seen a 35% reduction in absolute emissions. Over a period when Croda's results have been recognised as industry leading, this confirms that we are decoupling value growth from negative climate impact. We now need to go further to halve our 2018 absolute emissions by 2030. As Chris will touch on when we discuss supply chain collaborations, Croda has led the market with our approach to sustainable palm oil and derivatives, and this directly translates to savings in carbon associated with our raw materials, as sustainable palm generates fewer emissions. We talk now of being people positive by 2030, with ambitious health and well-being targets. However, we've calculated that we already protect 40 million lives a year with our sun care actives, and approximately 2 billion doses of vaccine have been administered containing Croda technology. Finally, we're most proud of our efforts to further improve safety, with a massive reduction in the chance of our own 4,500 people being harmed between arriving and leaving work each day, as measured by total recordable injury rate. Again, our commitment challenges us to go even further in the next 10 years, to perform alongside the top 10% of the global chemicals sector. As we look ahead to delivering on our 2030 targets, we're developing similar metrics to monitor progress and allow us to adjust resources, alongside intermediate milestones and leading indicators, to build confidence in our ability to meet them. This is new territory for Croda, 10-year targets, but we've been pretty good at meeting the previous 5-year cycle sustainability targets and are putting in place the mechanisms to hit these new ones as well. Finally, from me, before I introduce Julia, we've been trying to answer that age-old question: how do you value Croda's portfolio today against sustainability? Unfortunately, the answer is not a single stat, as you all have different needs and definitions in measuring this. So let me try and give you a couple of options. First up is by focusing on bio-based inputs. We know the world needs to defossil to stand any chance of meeting its climate targets, and this applies to raw material as much as energy source. As I hope you've picked up by now, Croda is well ahead of its sector peers in this respect, with 63% of its carbon-containing raw materials being bio-based at the beginning of 2020, targeting to grow this decade to 75%. Compare this with the EU chemical industry average of 10% rising to 25% by 2030, and you can see the difference in portfolio today. The eagle-eyed amongst you might challenge only a 12 percentage point rise over the next 10 years. It's a real stretch to cut out a third of our remaining fossil raw materials, and a challenge for Croda. Secondly, the idea of green revenues, those associated with positive impact on the environment. Again, there are as many definitions of green as there are indices, but as an example, according to the FTSE Russell framework, approximately 50% of our revenues could be considered green. Now, we don't particularly like this measure, as it doesn't consider social impact well enough, and you lose granularity over where Croda is really leading, or where we need to do more. It works well if you're in the waste management or public transport business. Croda's not. We've aligned our commitment with the SDGs and are driving to maximise Croda's impact to help meet the global challenge. So our preferred measure would be SDG-linked revenues. While this data on the slide is for illustrative purposes only, we'll be working towards defining this further in the coming months and years, where we can tag relevant business value to specific SDG targets using verified criteria and monitor progress. On the wider question of disclosure and reporting frameworks, Croda has aligned with the GRI, Global Reporting Initiative framework, since we began reporting on sustainability in 2007. We started last year to connect our framework with the TCFD, Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure Indicators, in our annual report, and are fully committed to aligning with the TCFD ahead of any statutory requirement in the UK. We've also commenced work to evaluate SASB as a broader, more relevant sustainability framework for the future. Thank you for your time,